Hi class, and welcome to my author presentation on Jeff Strand. This is an author that I've really enjoyed myself, both his adult and YA titles, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to share more of Strand's work. I'm particularly in this, I'm just going to highlight his YA titles and some of his accomplishments, a bit of background, and give you a little bit of a sense of why I think it might be good to know a bit more about him as well for all of us moving forward. And I'm just excited for the opportunity to share more because, again, this is an author that I personally have really enjoyed, and I'm glad that a couple of you in the chat have mentioned that you have as well. So, without any further ado, Jeff Strand. So, again, my author presentation. And Jeff Strand is known as the Clown Prince of Horror. Uh, just some of the quick details, real quick. Strand was born in 1970, Baltimore, Maryland. Has lived a number of places around the country, and one thing I think that shows in a lot of his writing is that he writes kind of authentically about a lot of the different locations that he features. He majored in creative writing at Bowling Green State University, and now lives in Tampa, Florida, with his wife and two cats. But those are all sort of the boring details about him. The reason why I really was sort of moved by his backstory, which is his entirely too long of a bio, which Mary Ellen mentioned was TLDR. I thought it was really funny, but I totally get her point. Jeff to me like stood out as a bit of a journeyman's author, somebody that's really kind of kept their nose to the grind for a number of years, finding different genres that he was able to voice. These sort of really likable, sort of comedic characters in that all sort of had this same sort of sense of his style, but in vastly different genres and different situations, but with a lot of like kind of overlapping similarities in a lot of his work. He has over 50 different novels under his belt, and recently has a growing body of YA titles, which again we're gonna kind of focus. And just kind of an important note, like not everything that he does is comedy horror. Just in particular, there's adult titles that are more like one in particular is kind of a rom-com title that I'll get into a bit later. And I just think that things like this should show his flexibility as an author. And so, just a couple of quick awards that Jeff has gotten. He's gotten the 2022 Splatterpunk Award. He's also, this is for Everything Has Teeth, and he's also received five-time nomination and one-time winner of the Bram Stoker's Award, and also has been the Master of Ceremonies for this for 10 years. And for Splatterpunk, if for anybody unfamiliar, is sort of a subgenre of the horror genre, and it's particularly distinguished by its like sort of graphic nature. It kind of goes there where other horror books do not necessarily. This feature really doesn't go in, or this doesn't really feature largely into Strand's YA titles, but it does with some of his adult titles for sure. Um, so I mentioned earlier, Strand has over 50 full-length novels under his belt. He has a handful of screenplays. He's written a number of short stories and novellas, and has ambitions of kind of being a lot of different things. I think like a lot of great creatives that sort of never quite quote grew up in the best way possible. And this is just a sampling of variety. This is a mix of his adult as well as young adult titles. Um, for me, I personally have a real affinity for Haunted Forest Horror, which he co-authored with James A. Moore. This was the first title that I found. It's kind of like Jurassic Park meets every twisted kind of like horror demon ghost trope. It was really great. And Kumquat is the romance title, the rom-com title that I really enjoyed, and one of the great reviews I had from this because Strand has kind of a cult following of readers is, and he gets people to read across these genres, which I think is particularly important about his work. It was damn you, Jeff Strand. I'm reading a rom-com and really enjoying it. I never thought this would happen. Um, And I just think that pairing something like Kumquat with reading Clowns versus Spiders after that is also just a really heartwarming tale in different ways, and really shows Strand's kind of flexibility as an author as well. Um, but so again, in this, I just wanted to give you a taste of some of his adult titles and his variety here. But I just wanted to focus specifically on his young adult titles, kind of and their reception, and just a little bit about each book. So, Stranger Things Have Happened. This is a great coming of age story. Most of these I would kind of classify as sort of quote like boy boy stories, or like kind of adventure stories. Um, and I couldn't help, just related to some of our class discussions, think about Andrew A. Smith's work in this, and some of the ways that he treated characters. I think there's a lot of similarities, but sort of all of the best parts, I think, of that writing are sort of embodied in Strand's work, and some of the more problematic bits about his characters and sort of unauthentic representation are largely absent in Strand's work. But so Stranger Things Happen is about a young musician whose grandfather, after making a very absurd bet for honor, that it suddenly passes away. So not only is Marcus Million, the third, the young boy in the story, faced with sort of living up to this bet that his grandfather made, but also sort of dealing with losing his grandfather as well, and sort of living up to uh, into his shoes as a magician, so to speak. And one thing that's really prominent in a lot of Strand's work is it's sort of highly pedantic. It's very dialogue heavy, very quote sparse in prose, as they say, and you have to sort of like narration that sort of lingers and kind of goes on a little bit too long sometimes. And as the review said, this is a great sort of stepping point for something like kids that are into like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and yeah, and then so another one is this is a little bit more of an older teen, where Stranger Things happen, maybe sort of younger, maybe 13, 14. How You Ruined My Life, maybe more kind of end of high school possibly. And this is about a young boy that's in a band, has a girlfriend, everything's kind of going well for him, but isn't really well off, and a sociopathic cousin who's quite affluent, sort of comes and stays for 3 months, and essentially just ruins this kid's life. But it's a really interesting kind of plot because I think it highlights a lot of times as a teen that we're sort of often our own worst enemies, and there's ways we could have communicated better, and ways that we sort of set the stage for ourselves to fail, so to speak. But really great. Jeff has a lot. Strand has a lot of really great additional lyrics and really nice kind of flavor added to this. And often another recurring theme is that he kind of like breaks the fourth wall a lot. So if any younger readers are into any kind of like comedy, like present in like Deadpool comics or something like that, where authors are often highly, self-referential, as well as acknowledging the audience directly, and kind of playing with themes like that. It does a lot of really funny things along those lines that is just really nice, and kind of a nice change of pace. Again, as Dr. Aronson pointed out, there's not a lot of very funny books these days, unfortunately, and so it's nice to have somebody that is just sort of a grown-up class clown looking to kind of entertain and also get a bit of a point across. So I have a bad feeling about this. Is sort of summer camp gone terribly, terribly wrong. And it is just chock full of these really funny and completely absurd wildness survival tips throughout. And I remember I was going for a hike with a friend, and we got in my car, and I had the audiobook on, and it happened to start right at the beginning of one of these survival tips, and I let it play through, and my friend was just had no context and was just absolutely cracking up. As you can see, Strand has pretty consistent reviews across the board. He does have some good reads, kind of in like the lower fours, like 4.2s, but a lot of these are sort of mid to high lows. He's not everybody's cup of tea, but the people that do really like him really do like him, and they have quite a bit of content to pull from. Most of his books are about 3 to 500 pages. The audio books are about 4 to 5 hours, and so they're pleasurable and substantial, but not anything that you couldn't get through pretty quickly. And you again have a lot to go through. Very action kind of driven too, and ends on a cliffhanger a lot for at the end of chapter. So definitely makes you want to keep reading. The greatest zombie movie ever made is a group of teens making YouTube movies that have sort of not gone anywhere, and then they land kind of a dream actress, and then really need to up the ante. And yeah, just sort of it seems like a really nice fun one. This one I've been saving a bit for the summer myself, so I haven't had the pleasure yet. Uh, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Yes, Strand was able to do the novelization of this. This is another one that I've purchased but haven't been able to read myself, and so I'm looking forward to this as well. Um, and this one has really great reviews. It's all original jokes, and that was a real kind of point of pride. So the only kind of original jokes would be setups for sort of new original content from Strand, and that was something that he really has prided himself on, as well as the originality, as well as the reverence back to the source material. A Bad Day for Voodoo is probably one of his most well-known titles. I was surprised that it didn't have maybe even higher reviews than this, even though 3.9 is essentially a pretty good review. But this is the title that when I was mentioning Jeff Strand to a lot of people, they were like, "Oh, I know Bad Day for Voodoo," especially some of the kind of YA librarians in my life knew of this title a little more specifically. Um, and just as a loose theme that sort of ties his YA titles together, is Strand's sort of recurring message and belief that it's okay to fail. And I just think that's also a really great lesson for YA to have that lesson, but also have it with a sense of humor and humility that is really particular to Strand's writing, and has just the right dash of self-deprecation as well, without taking himself too seriously. Uh, so, as somebody that's known as the Clown Prince of Horror, we haven't seen many like scary kind of YA titles in what I've shown you so far. And I would say Autumn Bleeds into Winter is definitely the darkest. This is more of a sort of psychological thriller than more of a kind of horror thing, like around like Clowns versus Spiders, or Dead Clown Barbecue. Um, and this is the point of view of a I believe a 30 something telling the story of when they were 14 and their best friend was abducted in Fairbanks, Alaska, and despite knowing who the person was, they couldn't quite prove it. And sort of what do you do? Do you take that into your own hands? And what do you owe your friend? Um, and it's just really great examples a lot of times, I think, in Strand's work, of teens doing absolutely what they believe is right in their hearts, and then having to deal with the repercussions of that, and learning a lot of really great and valuable lessons along the way. Um, and yeah, I think he really treats his teen audience with probably a lot more respect than his actual adult audience, because some of his adult titles tend to be a little more tongue in cheek and be a little more not frivolous necessarily, but he definitely seems to really treat his teen audience with a lot of care. Um, it watches in the dark. I'd say this is probably the most closest thing I can just say. Like, this is like almost an R.L. Stine sort of story. A lot of times, Strand will approach his writing with thinking of certain themes or tropes that he hasn't dealt with before, and sort of using those as prompts. And I read an interview where he's like, "Oh, I haven't done a scarecrow story. So let me think about that and see where this goes. And I have to say, this just recently came out. It's very rare times in my life that I'm waiting for the drop date for a book to come out for me to just immediately binge this and have it done before the end of the day. And It Watches in the Dark was a lot of fun. And this was one of those stories for me. It tells the story of two twins, a boy and a girl, and again, this one in particular, I was thinking back to Andrew A. Smith a bit, even though the writing is quite different, just in his handling of female characters and just how much more, I don't know, sensitive I think Strand is, and how it's just sort of like jumps out to me. I don't know this for a fact that like maybe he was like raised by women, or at least has a lot of respect for the women in his life in a way that Andrew A. Smith maybe seems like he's never really engaged with one personally. Um, what's next for Strand? He doesn't really seem like he's slowing down anytime soon, actually. This is this Eek series. This is a second one coming out. I believe there's at least a third one slated as well, and this is Nightmare in the Backyard. This is coming August 6th. I'm also looking forward to this. It's another one in his YA series. Um, and I don't know too many details about this, but he also has a couple of forthcoming movies that he kind of jokes publicly about not being able to talk about. And for some of these reasons, again, he graduated from his creative writing program in the early 90s and has been writing relatively consistently since. In his bio, he jokes about it taking some time off and not rotten writing when he should, but pretty consistently getting a novel or two done a year since, and now just recently has been at a point where writing is able to sustain him full time as an author, and has had a lot of success with a variety of revenue streams that's allowed him to focus on this, and now seems to just be churning out material and having a fair amount of commercial success doing it. And so I think that even though he's been around a while and has quite a number of books behind his belt, I think that he's going to um, be quite a bit more noteworthy lately, especially given some of his recent wins. Winning that last Bram Stoker Award is really great. Even though he says his bio is funny when he could joke about being a four-time loser. Um, but all in all, I've really enjoyed reading his work. I think that there's something for everybody. And again, they're not like big investments in their own. And in a way, if you're not kind of expecting a lot, I think you're going to be super pleasantly surprised just at his own sort of brand of quirkiness, and the way that even in a YA title, he seems to bring this sort of terror that any more of his like sort of more horror centric novels can bring to just kind of the basic like teen like high school interaction. Like these are real existential threats, and he knows how to sort of like build like a tense moment, and also like how to like just diffuse it totally with a joke. So just kind of a masterful writer in that regard, and I think is a prime example of somebody um, just putting something out there and putting something out there and practicing and practicing and practicing until they find a craft that's sort of all their own, sort of borrowing obviously from a lot of other authors, but then creating just his very own unique voice. So I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation, and I hope that I'll see you in the comments with maybe some of the Strand novels that you yourself have read as well. So thank you and have a great night. I'll include the slides as well as my references here in the chat. Have a great night.